nicely through mid-wicket. England jog. Carlos Brathwaite! Carlos Brathwaite!
And he wants to finish it, and he might have done it as well. 5 times 50 over England World Cup champion.
Hey, you again. Welcome to the Road to the Cup Finals, the new segment of Bales and Tales with my boy, my professor. Well, not my professor. BG.
Professor BG,
Professor
as
BG
always.
in the house. We are here to talk cricket T20 World Cup, USA and West Indies, happening right next door to us, in a way.
Yes.
You excited for this one, BG?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was always going to be an interesting one. You know, the IPL was super exciting. And it was always a case of, wow, I mean, you have this international tournament that's being thrown at us right after the IPL's conclusion. So, you know, just as we were, you know, sort of settling and getting ourselves, I mean, coming to terms with what happened with the IPL, we had to don the blue of India and, you know, back our team. And as we record this, we actually attended a screening today of the India-Pakistan game. Would you like to say how it ended? Mocha. cut. But no, so we actually went to a screening of the India-Pakistan game and we were super excited for this one. These games always deliver. Even if it isn't the best cricket, I think the edge always adds a little extra to the game. And this time was no different. The match was in New York for starters, so very close to home. You can figure out where that is. But yeah, so that it was a great game. You know, do you want to go into the game?
Yeah, let's just go straight into the game.
Yeah.
So slight, sort of setup for the game. This was India's second game and also Pakistan's second game.
Yes.
And, for totally, by chance they were put into the same group, I guess. Coincidentally, along with, who was it, Ireland?
So it's going to be, I think it's Ireland, India, Pakistan, Canada, and
the US.
The USA.
And so both of them playing their second game. India happened to win their first one against Ireland pretty straightforward. Pakistan did not win their first one. And I guess we'll do that game next.
Sure.
But they were coming in needing this win, right? Like, so Pakistan really needed to win this one. A lot of their qualification hopes hinged on it. And in fact, they were handed the game on a platter, you would have to say. They won the toss on a very tricky New York pitch that has seen all of 3 games. Doesn't have even pace, doesn't have even bounce. Doesn't particularly favor spinners too much. So I guess there's that goes for the batsmen. But like pace bowling is hard to get away. Average scores have been pretty low, under 150. Maybe lower than that.
Probably
right?
121,
120, 130.
Yeah.
And India, with the mammoth batting lineup that they have, end up getting only
119. Very underwhelming. Must be said that they started off pretty well. Didn't start super well. We lost Virat Kohli in the second over. Yeah, he scored a cover, loose shot of Naseem Shah. 4 runs, meager for, considering we just saw his IPL exploits. It's definitely been a bit of a underwhelming start for Kohli this tournament. Also failed against Ireland as well. Caught a third man for very cheap. And then we kind of steadied the ship a little bit. And we did lose a few wickets, but we made our way to 80, I believe, for a couple of wickets down in 10 overs, which in fact, truth be told, is a good score on that New York wicket. And then, unfortunately, that's where we kind of lost our way a little bit, right? I mean, what happened in the middle overs?
So Aksar came in early, surprisingly. Both Virat and Rohit go fairly early. Rishabh Pant, who's been, the sort of stand-in number 3 in a way, regain of form kind of position I think they've given him, but has been doing really well, played pretty well in the Ireland game as well. Also played a huge role in stabilizing the innings, getting us to 80. Surprisingly, Aksar comes in at number 4, not Sky and not Hardik and not Shivam Dubey, but Aksar, and did a pretty good job getting us there. But once he perished, we lose Sky, we lose Hardik, we lose Jadeja first ball due to the two-faced sort of slowish nature of the pitch. And, so we were into the tail pretty early after the 10 overs and basically trying to, push the envelope a little bit and try to get closer to that 130, 140 mark.
And then the next thing, our tail-enders go for their Hail Mary shots and then we're bowled out for 119 and you're like, oh no, I feel the worst, right?
Yeah, I think the energy even at the bar was like, it was down. Pakistani fans were on a high, literally dancing all over the place, parading. And, there was a part of you that's like, okay, don't celebrate too early. But 120 felt like, a score that just run a ball after the hitting that we've seen over the past few months just did not feel enough. And for the major part of the Pakistan innings as well, they seemed right on track, right? Like, of course, I think Babar and Rizwan gave them a decent start, but kind of, went early. Babar went pretty early, courtesy of...
Great catch, by the way.
Great catch from
Sky.
Sky had slipped off the one and only Boom Boom. And that was followed by Usman Khan coming in. That was, for some reason, a pretty comical stay in the middle. Like, had played outside, played a bunch of balls, missing them, head over heels really, and almost ended up with a very uncanny run out in the end that was called, I think, a ball before.
I think he was batting incredibly slowly and it was quite a painful watch, truth be told, I'm sure as a Pakistan fan in particular. But we called the run out and it almost happened, but then he was dismissed very soon after. I think it was a slider from Akshar Patel. Good review by India, got him LBW, and then came, their middle order.
Yeah, so Fakhar Zaman comes in, he hits a few lusty blows, dangerous batsman for sure with a small total. I think he was someone who could take, the game out of our hands. But he ends up going pretty early. Hardik Pandya, he gives him a bit of a send-off, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. Swag Max.
Hardik was in a bit of a Bollywood-esque move. Definitely fitting for the occasion. It was a charged game and he had a bunch of gestures, acting surprised. Yeah, it's pretty theatrics. There was some good theatrics from Hardik, and I'm glad that it came off. It could have looked a little silly had they, just gone on from there and scored that target. But I think the turning point that we talked about was they were also around 80 in the, I think, 11th or 12th over, and Bumrah comes back into the attack after Bumrah kinds of things early on. I think he just bowled 1 over in the beginning and bowls, as you would expect, a good on-target delivery, hitting the stumps, and Rizwan wildly swings. Just swings across the line, is like, misses the ball by a good distance and is bowled, and the entire bar erupts literally, and Pakistan are at 4 down at this point, and they need, I think, about 40
odd
in 6 overs or 7 overs even. It was almost like run a ball, but something felt different. I think after that it started to feel a little different, right?
Absolutely. I think, at that point it's funny because, they were showing the predictors consistently, and for good reason. It had India at about a 20% chance or so, and Pakistan at about 80% chance. And this was around when they needed 40 runs or so, and they probably lost about 4 wickets at the time, and they needed it, I think, of 6 overs. So a little more than a run a ball. And then that's when the new batsmen came in and they started missing. They were consistently beaten outside off stump by our spinners. I remember this is one over where Aksar beat, I don't remember who the batsman was, the left-arm middle order batsman. It wasn't Fakhar Zaman, it was the next, I think it was Imad Wasim. Imad Wasim came in and he was beaten, I think, 4 times in a row, trying to late cut, and he was missed. And you could just tell that it was starting to get to, and it got to a point where I think they needed 30 off 3 overs. So that just tells you how well we bowled in towards the end. Mohammad Siraj comes up to bowl. For whatever reason, we feared the worst at that point. We knew Bumrah had an ace up his sleeve in the 19th, but the key was to ensure he had something to bowl to, right, at that point.
Yeah, Siraj did a pretty good job. Slightly wavered, but nothing too crazy. Just I think informed Siraj stuff and gave maybe 8 runs in that
8
over.
runs or so,
It was
yeah.
about like 22 to get in the last 2. And I think Arshdeep also pretty solid death bowler. Where like as long as he has 14 runs to play with, we should be good here. But boom, had other things in mind.
Incredible last over.
Miserly second last over, who gave I think 4 runs total.
Very paltry, 4 runs or so, and then he gave Arshdeep
18
to sort of defend in the last over, and that was done fairly seamlessly. They did need 12 off the last 2, but that was, I think at that point it was just elementary. It was for the Indian for Arshdeep in particular. So I think we saw off the win comfortably in the end by 8 runs.
Yeah.
One more win against Pakistan in the World Cup format. That's now 6-1 to India. The solitary
7-1.
loss. 7-1 or 6-1?
Including this.
Oh yeah, so now it's 7-1. Sorry, Pakistan fans, but the pain goes on. 7-1. But all in all, good day at the office, right?
Yeah, really good day. I think the bowling, in recent years with Indian cricket, I think the bowling has always been the most heartening side of things. Like, I think it's like a whole new attack, especially with someone like Jasprit Bumrah being, the spearhead. And he definitely was the game changer in this one. All the bowlers bowled pretty well, but, the difference, I think, defending that really small total was Jasprit Bumrah. Ended up with 3 wickets, just 14 runs in his 4 overs. And that puts Pakistan in an extremely precarious spot because of what happened earlier in the week.
Ooh.
And this is actually a really good game. And Pakistan, well, let's talk about... So Pakistan was playing the US, the United States of America, in their World Cup campaign. One that, they didn't come in with any kind of, any sort of noise behind them, any expectations there. But they are the home nation, one of the home nations. And I think, this tournament partly is a huge eyes sort of looking at this market in terms of cricket's marketability here. And the US definitely, put their hat in. They came here not just to participate, they came to play, they came to win. And the US, having already beaten Canada in the first game, in a fairly, it wasn't a walk in the park. Good show from Canada as well. Ended up putting a good target on the board, 194, I believe, something in the 190s. And the US chased it in the end somewhat comfortably. But there were a point where it was not looking like it was going to be done until Adam Jones came in.
Incredibly good knock. How much did he score?
It was like
90 odd, right?
90 odd of like 50 balls.
Freaking good innings, one at that. And remember, this is a derby of sorts. I mean, the US and Canada, I think both teams take their rivalry, regardless of the sport, pretty seriously. I think it needs to be said.
Yeah. And funnily enough, US and Canada is the team that has played the first cricket match. And we talked about this briefly on a previous episode with the star guest. Check out the other episodes, dude. Check them out. Scroll down.
Leave your comments. Subscribe.
Just do it. Yeah, as I spray into the camera. Go check out some of the other episodes. But yeah, so I don't know who won that game. That was back in 1844. But the US wins this one. Aaron Jones, fantastic innings, 94 of just 40 balls. 10 sixes, tied for the highest sixes
in a T20 innings.
In a T20 innings for a country that's just kind of getting into cricket. A minnow and associate nation. Isn't that like such a weird way to call them?
Yeah, that's sad. I don't want to label them that.
Just associates.
Yeah.
They're not part of the real.
Considering this is a country that likes to anoint themselves as world champions for every freaking game on the planet, for domestic tournaments, because associate nations
there must be a real, maybe it's somewhat deserved, but might feel like
just put them in their place.
Big kick of kick.
Yeah, you know
Big
what?
kick in the butt side.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the butt side.
In the butt side.
Yeah.
Butt side.
Well, okay, so US, on a high at this point, playing their first game. A lot of the other games had happened, top of the table, and we're like, okay, coming up against a strong, well, not the strongest Pakistan team, but a definitely not an associate Pakistan team.
And a team, mind you, with one of the finest bowling attacks in the competition, has to be said, very scary on their day.
Very scary with the bowling on pitches that have, sort of shown to favor the fast bowlers. You're definitely looking at this one like this is a huge uphill task for the US. But they definitely had other ideas. Pakistan's innings, I think, this was played in Dallas, right? And the Dallas pitch was somewhat not exactly New York. Didn't have the two-pace nature, slightly better for batting. I believe the first game was also that US was played there, and they ended up getting 190. So we're looking at scores, a little higher. And Pakistan somehow didn't actually...
Underwhelming. They never really got going.
Yeah.
Did they press I think they kind of struggled to really get going, and I think Babar Azam ended up being the highest scorer in the innings, but it was a painstaking 44 or 43, I believe. So it was a run a ball. And to be fair, this is something that we've seen a lot of, the early week of the tournament, where we find ourselves lauding knocks wherein they are comfortably less than a run a ball. But having said that, considering the match situation, you kind of give them their accolades. But given the fairly docile nature of the pitch, it was a bit of a strange innings from Babar, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think considering the opposition, considering the pitch, I think in your mind, you're probably thinking of a total that's a little higher. And I think most of all, we didn't see the issue being pushed, right? Like, I think there was no aggressive sort of outlook taken. And yeah, I agree, a lot of teams haven't played with that so much. It seems like slightly cagey affair, especially with a lot of teams that are minnows or associate nations. Like, you want to seal the win and not take any big risks. But it's definitely felt in our shared opinion and to a lot of people, like a somewhat too docile innings from the Pakistani batsmen. But so Babar was playing very, sort of circumspect, but Shardab did come in and he hit a few lusty blows. In fact, at the end of 12 overs, I believe they were about 80, not really the slowest, but not great. And you're thinking that maybe they'll kick on from there, but some really good bowling from Notush Kejige ends up getting 3 wickets. He bowls Azam Khan, who has been unfortunately just the butt of many jokes in this IPL. IPL. I'm still back there.
Still in IPL.
Hey, we're still in the IPL. Can't wait for next year. But he's been trolled partly for his weight, partly because we don't really know what exactly he does really well. But let's not stick with that for too long. Pakistan, sort of ends up only getting about 159. You still think that with the bowling that they had, would have been a tricky chase for the US. But as Monank Patel, the captain of the US team, wonder where he's from. He said at the mid stage that if they were given 159 at the start, they would have taken it, right? And the United States batting though. Have to say, Monank leading the way as the opener, along with Andries Goose first. Played, it seemed like they were in control of that chase almost the entire way, right? Through the initial overs, they got a decent start, no fireworks, but considering the score, fairly up with the run rate. Middle overs, smooth. They keep going, get the occasional boundary.
It got to a point where, Aaron Jones and Nitish Kumar were kind of batting towards the end. And I'm going to be honest, I don't quite remember how much they needed, but it got to a situation where in the last over, what was it? They needed, I think, around 15 or so.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. And what happened is Nitish Kumar kind of failed to push the needle a little bit, and he was a little too slow. But, when it really kind of mattered in the end, they were able to get it to a point where they actually ended up tying the match, right? And so it ended on a tie, which meant we were going to have our first super over of the competition. And so the rules of a super over are the team that bats second and ended up tying the match starts off the super over. So that's really, so that basically what that means is the USA had 1 over to put as many runs on the board as they could. And so there unfolds the super over.
which was possibly, in my opinion, possibly one of the worst overs period in the history of cricket. It was abysmal bowling. I mean, and this doesn't have to do with any of my allegiances.
Was it just the bowling though? Was it just the bowling?
No,
or was
no.
it just
It was abysmal cricket all around.
All
Fielding,
around.
keeping, composure, skill, captaincy.
everything that could go
possible.
wrong went wrong. So for context, at the end of that one over, the USA scored 19 runs. And if I asked any of our viewers how many boundaries they hit in that over, obviously the fact that I'm asking you that question means you would have guessed otherwise. But my point is, you would have said definitely above one boundary. Yes, one boundary, and it was the fourth. And the funny part was, it was extras galore, it was misfields galore, it was overthrows galore, it was running between the wickets galore. It was just one royal mess from the Pakistani fielders. And you could tell Mohammad Amir, who bowled that over, was not happy at all. I mean, he was partly involved also in the wides that he bowled, wherein the keeper fumbled the ball and then they ran bys. It was ludicrous stuff all around. And unfortunately, 19 is truly not acceptable. But despite that, you still had the feeling that Pakistan were going to be able to get over the line just because of the relative inexperience of the US bowlers, whoever was going to come to bowl. Do you want to talk through what happened in the Pakistan Super Over?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, 18, I think it was, at this point, like US felt like they were in a strong position. I think Pakistan during the innings, the most that they got in one over was around that much. And so they had to produce their best on that pitch. Still doable. But then we have Saurabh Netravalkar step in.
What a story. This story is incredible.
He has become a bit of a cult legend.
Hero, yeah.
Saurabh Netravalkar moved to the US in somewhere early 2010s, I believe.
Yes.
And came for a degree in his master's
Masters
degree
in Computer Engineering from Cornell.
from Cornell. And
Where does he work now?
smart guy. And has taken a path that will be familiar for a lot of Indians for sure. And now is a technical lead at Oracle, who is still currently employed, by the way, and is taking meetings during the games, from what I hear.
Which is incredible.
Between innings and stuff. Come on, Oracle. Give him some lead.
Do better. Yeah. Give the man the raise he deserves.
Give the man a raise, man. But so, amazing story, really. And funny thing is, there's also, so Saurabh Netravalkar didn't just come and pick up cricket here, obviously. Played for the Indian under-19 team at one point with certain Chiku back in the past. And he had also bowled, I don't know whether it was bowled, but taken Babar Azam's wicket back then when he was starting to play. So, he had rubbed shoulders with the best of the best, but doing it, halfway across the world with a new franchise. I'm still in the IPL and I got there. Bowls absolutely fantastic super over. If there was all that composure that I think Mohammad Amir and Pakistan collectively as a team were lacking. So Saurabh Netravalkar brought that in. He was hit, I think, first or second ball.
He was hit for a four, and he also nerves kind of played a part because it's safe to say that these people aren't really accustomed to these situations. The most intense pressure when you're playing at an international level. Did bowl a couple of wides, nerves were there for everyone to see, but he really held his nerve and it really mattered towards the end. And I think at the end they were able to see, he saw them home by, what was the deficit?
Yeah, they just got 13.
Yeah, they scored 13. So, that's, the 6 runs, win by 5 or 6 runs. And, Twitter was delightful. At this point, there were genuinely screenshots being shared of Saurabh Netravalkar's Slack and his LinkedIn obviously speaking to, his accomplishments to date, and how he's followed the typical sort of engineering path that a lot of Indian parents aspire, for their kids. And so I think his parents will definitely be proud of that, one. And then to just casually show up and say, you know what, I'm just going to be out of office till June, 20th or whatever it was, on his actual Slack via work. I don't know who managed to, send out that screenshot, but found it absolutely hilarious that a guy could do this, part-time, just come beat Pakistan, one of the most crucial moments like for the country in the cricketing landscape, and
Just beat Pakistan on his day off
yeah,
from work.
no biggie. And I mean, the way they're playing, he might need to put that return to office date a little further out. If you think about it.
Yeah, it definitely. So US, I think India just pipped the US on the top of the table now, and it's the US and India sitting on top, both on 4 points from their 2 games, and Pakistan is in a lot of trouble. So India has to play US next, and that game. If the US happens to win that game, it
Never.
kind of spells curtains for. We haven't done this in a week, and I've forgotten how to talk. It spells curtains for Pakistan. They would have to. No, it's impossible.
I think it's done. At that point, it's done. But the fact that a number of these teams are actually getting a chance to kind of rub shoulders with the very best teams is very beneficial for the game. Yes, truth be told, not all of them are going to get out of the group stage because competition is that fierce and intense. But this is great for the game, and hopefully we see a lot more of this moving forward. I think it's the best sort of situation where you can kind of get them to start playing the game, kind of the shorter format of the game.
Okay.
Apply your trade against the very best and kind of see where it takes you and take those learnings away and, make it count soon enough.
And but moving on to the next group, right? Each of the other groups, there's generally 2, sort of established teams, and 3 other teams that are, the sort of associate nations. And Group B involves Scotland, Australia, Namibia, England, and Oman. If you're not a fan of cricket, the established teams are England and Australia. Oman, I have a soft side for having spent a fair amount of time there. They did play an interesting game against Namibia. Oman went to a super over, and it was a low-scoring game, as a lot of games have been here. But Oman, it's not easy playing in those clutch situations. As a team that hasn't been there very often, they end up giving, I think, more than 20 runs over there, and Namibia ends up on the right side of that one.
It's so funny how our tone changes when we talk about an affiliate nation and how their Super Over fortunes went versus how Pakistan's fortunes went. No bias whatsoever. But anyway.
Yeah, I think I was probably happier watching Pakistan lose to the US than seeing our win.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Pakistan fans, I guess, if you're watching.
Don't come on us, guys.
Anyway, so Oman find themselves at the bottom of the table. Unfortunately, lost all of their games. Even today, I believe, lost against Scotland, who have picked up. In fact, Scotland is on top of the table.
Incredible stuff.
Having drawn one of their games against England due to rain. So England have lost out in one game, which should have been points that they picked up. England have also lost to Australia recently, and that game was...
It was a belter of a pitch, though, must be said. This was played at Barbados. This was played at Barbados, and Australia batted first. Just a quick summary of that game, and Australia batted first against England. Seemed like a bit of a belter. Ground size was very small, so there were sixes galore. Batsmen found it very easy to clear the boundaries, unlike what we're seeing in pitches like New York, where it's less to do with the ground size, though, but it's more like Pranav said, kind of the two-pace nature of the wicket. So it made it very difficult for batsmen to trust the pitch. But then, Australia, what happened? They batted first. David Warner and Travis Head. We've said this so many times, at least about Travis Head in the recently concluded IPL. He's gone gung-ho right from the get-go.
England tried. They tried to open with Moeen Ali and Will Jacks.
In theory, it sounded okay. Off spinners to lefties, that's a favourable matchup at times, but they got an absolute shellacking. And I mean an absolute shellacking. Warner tore into them as well. Gave them the electric start they needed. And, the rest of the batsmen kind of chipped in. Mitchell Marsh played a useful knock. Marcus Stoinis as well, down the order.
Oh, and guess who? Glenn Maxwell. Ended up scoring. Well, it wasn't like a Glenn Maxwell kind of knock, but scored 5 times his average in the IPL for
Is
us.
that the bar? Is that the bar? So Australia posted a very good score of 200, right? 201 for 7 in 20 overs. Then England obviously started off in response with Phil Salt and Joss Butler taking the attack to Mitchell Starc. Took a liking for him. I know Phil Salt hit Mitchell Starc over long on for 106 meter 6, which was astounding, incredible stuff, honestly. But once they lost both openers, I think they kind of lost the impetus in their innings, and nobody was able to really revive it for a consistent period of time. I know Moeen Ali kind of tore into Maxwell in this one over where he carted him for 3 sixes, all kind of on the leg side, but I think that was kind of it. They lost wickets at regular intervals. Nobody was really set for long periods of time. The Australian bowlers continuously probed away at good lengths and coerced them into bad shots. And at the end, it was a very underwhelming sort of chase. Like what promised a lot kind of petered out into a very underwhelming chase. And England could only muster up about 165, right, for 6 in their allotted 20 overs, which meant Australia romped home by a comfortable 36 runs. And by virtue of that, based on what Pranav said, Scotland find themselves top of the table. Australia find themselves comfortably placed in second. And I believe that's the match that they still have to play, right? Australia has to take on Scotland.
Yeah.
And sorry, Scotland fans, but you would kind of fancy Australia to win that. But having said that, England is kind of the takeaway of this group because they find themselves in a very precarious position now where I'm not quite sure what needs to work. Do you have an inkling?
England has to win both of their games,
Okay.
and they have to win well. Because they are on 0 wins, but they have the single point.
Okay.
So if Australia beats Scotland, then Scotland is going to be on. I mean, Scotland's going to remain on 5. Australia is going to be on 6, and if England wins both of them, they just tie Scotland.
And then it comes down to run rate, I
Then it
suppose.
comes down to
Because
run
it's a weird one because you would have assumed maybe head-to-head comes into play, but their match got rained out. And by the way, Scotland were on course for a pretty good total there. They were 90 for no loss in 10. So this wasn't like a case of, I got lucky. So that's a group that we need to look out for because England could just be in a slight bit of bother there.
Yeah, absolutely. They really could. Tricky groups, the first 2 for the more established nations. The T20 World Cup definitely bringing some drama of its own, competing with the IPLA, my favorite trophy. But besides that, let's move on to the next group, which is Group C, which has, in this case, actually not the easiest group. I think this is more sort of the group of death, I think, than any other one, right? Like Afghanistan, a team that, has been sort of called the associate sort of nations, but has been playing so much cricket in the recent years. They have a bunch of extremely talented spinners. Their batting lineup has been looking a lot stronger now. Their opening batsman has won the IPL. And they've been looking like a strong team, and it shows because they find themselves on top of the table. They've won both of their games. I believe they beat either Uganda or Papua New Guinea. But the surprise performance from them was that Afghanistan beat New Zealand, who also is in Group C along with West Indies. And
They just beat.
they didn't just beat New Zealand. They handed New Zealand an ass whooping, if I may say so, pardon my French. It was an absolute sort of masterclass in a way from Afghanistan. Batting first, a lot of the Athers and Nasser Hussain put up a sort of show just before the game talking about how a lot of teams could find Afghanistan hard to navigate. And, because their spinners are real quality, right? They've shown it in the IPL. We've just known it for a long time. Rashid Khan being one of the best spinners in the world for some time now. And they definitely showed it, but initially with the bat, both of the openers, Ramanullah Gurbaz and Ibrahim Zadran give Afghanistan a flying start, really. Both of them end up getting, Gurbaz ends up staying sort of almost throughout the entire innings, really some hefty blows towards the end. But there was also Omar Zaid who comes in and he plays like a good knock in the middle overs as well, keeping the scoring rate high. Of course, this wasn't the kind of pitch. I think ultimately they end up getting a par score. It wasn't the biggest score, 159 again. Where have we heard that number? Decent enough score. I think New Zealand would have sort of like fancied to get that one. What happened in that innings, BG?
Oof. Well, my God, where do we even start? I think, to Pranav's point, 159, definitely a good total, something to bowl at, typically is the way I would think of it. But I think the assumption was New Zealand would, do this fairly comfortably, although it must be said that they were relatively rusty. They hadn't really played a whole lot of cricket. So I suppose that was why people were giving Afghanistan a bit of a fighter's chance there. And then what happened was definitely something nobody saw coming, right? So Finn Allen faces up to, I always get his name wrong, so forgive me. Fazal Haq Farooqi. Beautiful left arm pacer, beautiful in swinger, in dipper into Finn Allen. He goes for
we're going to
Mary
put that
shot.
one up here.
We're going to put that one up there, so you'll see it. Goes for the Hail Mary shot over, I believe it was mid-on, loses his leg stump and his middle stump as well. Beautiful sight for any fast bowler in the world, and that really set the tone as well. He then later got Devon Conway sort of chipping the ball straight to, the fielder. What's the fielder called? I always get that. Short cover. He kind of fended the ball straight to him. The ball kind of stopped on the pitch. Again, mark of good bowling considering they kind of loaded up the offside. And then, then came Rashid Khan. He started chipping away. Oh, and then I have to say, he also gets Daryl Mitchell out. Beautiful around the wicket ball, kind of shaping into Daryl Mitchell and just shapes away at the last minute. A fast bowler's delight, gets him nicking off. So he basically destroys the top order at this point. But then you still back New Zealand because of their know-how. They're generally very reliable, right, when it comes to these ICC tournaments. And then comes Rashid Khan. Rashid Khan's narrative is one that we're used to, having seen his exploits in the IPL predominantly, but also at an international level. Gets the big scalp of Kane Williamson. A bit of a weird decision by Kane Williamson to run the ball down a third man, knowing there was a slip place there for that very shot. And then, it was just wickets at regular intervals of time, and New Zealand just never got any sort of iota momentum going. And, before you know it, believe it or not, they were bowled out for 75. Yes, you heard that right. 75. Afghanistan scored more than double New Zealand's total. Let that sink in. So, remarkable win for Afghanistan. I will stress on Pranav's point, they have to be taken seriously moving forward in this tournament. I think what's worked out for them, what's worked really well for them is the increased exposure that a lot of their cricketers have gotten to, sort of playing with other international cricketers. The IPL has been a boon for their cricketers in a way, and, the recently concluded 50 overs World Cup really enabled a lot of them to showcase the talents where they were incredibly close to, going through. I mean, if that match against Australia had gone the other way, if not for that freakish innings from Maxwell, you just never know how things could have panned out. Hey, we might have won the World Cup for all you know, guys. But,
India-Afghanistan
final. I mean,
in the near future,
hopefully, I'd love for that to happen. And there's some smart appointments. I think a lot of credit also has to go to Jonathan Trott, who's been in their setup now for a while. He's often spoke of the challenges that setup has faced and how hard it's been to kind of navigate sort of the disadvantages that they faced on a regular basis. They've also made a very, very smart appointment recently with Dwayne Bravo as a consultant for the World Cup. And we know Dwayne Bravo, sort of always had a trick up his sleeve when it came to, bowling in the death overs and just in the T20 format in general. One, these guys probably played in almost every franchise out there in the world, so he knows a thing or two. So smart appointments and, a lot more belief in what they're doing has enabled them to reach a stage where they find themselves bullying one of the big boys.
Yeah, I think, Afghanistan, they seem to have come really prepared, and I think they're set up well. These are pitches that are going to favor them, so they are definitely ones to watch. And they find themselves on top of the table alongside West Indies. West Indies has played, the sort of more minnows in this sort of group, you'd have to say Uganda and Papua New Guinea. Although Papua New Guinea did give West Indies a sort of tricky chase. It was a low-scoring game, and West Indies had to score about 110, and it wasn't the easiest. I believe they were 6 or 7 down at the end, and had only about an over to spare in the end. They had an over to spare, but that was due to some late fireworks. So, a lot of the sort of smaller teams coming to the party. And this kind of leaves New Zealand also in a tricky spot. Of course, they played only the one game, but they have West Indies and the other 2 teams to play with, Afghanistan. And these guys already on 4 points each. So I guess we have a third group that is already seeming a little unconventional, not as expected. Drama. So finally, let's round up this discussion. Welcome back to Bales and Tales. This is the next segment of our journey that we're excited to embark upon, and it'll be, sorry for missing out on the single week. It's going to be weekly episodes henceforth. But Group D, South Africa, Bangladesh, Netherlands, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Initially, when I looked at this group, I was like, oh, maybe this is sort of the group of death, because it has South Africa, it has Netherlands that has done, somewhat well in the T20 World Cup. In the 50 overs World Cup last year, edged West Indies, in fact, into qualification, which I think has never happened since the inception. And then Bangladesh, kind of unpredictable. Sri Lanka, I think, more so effective maybe in this format than others. Unfortunately for Sri Lanka, not going so well. Their campaign sitting at the bottom.
South Africa beat Sri Lanka pretty comprehensively. The first match they played, very low-scoring affair. They bowled them out for not a lot to go off of, except the bowlers looked pretty damn scary. Sri Lanka, again, very underwhelming. I think it's an unfortunate sort of indictment of Sri Lankan cricket, but they appeared very underwhelming now for a certain period of time. Certain questions need to be asked, whether they have sort of the right infrastructure in place, and also whether they are selecting sort of the best available players at their disposal, because I feel like it's been a little underwhelming for a little too long now. But South Africa, comfortable victors there. And then South Africa played Netherlands in a game which, and this is an interesting one, because it's developed into a little bit of a rivalry in recent times, and Netherlands have kind of had the wood over South Africa now. They've beaten them in the last 2 ICC events they've played in. So it's definitely a bit of a bogey team for South Africa. They kind of didn't know that going into it. So the Netherlands batted first. I believe they hit 103 or something along those lines in 20 overs. Again, nothing too daunting, but again, on the New York pitch, it's one of those things where 103 almost feels like 160, 150, 160, with tricky chase. South Africa in response, absolutely disastrous start, 3 for 3, and you're thinking, could they do the hat trick over South Africa in 3 ICC events? That would be that would be an insane feather in their cap. I mean, they beat South Africa 3 times in 3 ICC events. But then I think, and then they lost Klaasen quickly to make it 12 for 4, and then they're truly staring down the barrel at that point. But then David Miller, as he's done actually a lot for South Africa in ICC events in particular, played a very calm, mature innings, kind of shepherded them through, maybe the bulk of the innings, about 15 or 16 overs. And then when push really came to shove towards the end, where they needed a couple of boundaries to really reduce the arrears, he more than delivered, hit a couple of lusty blows towards the end, a couple of sixes that really made the game academic from their perspective, and was able to comfortably guide them home from what appeared to be a very sort of tricky position where it could have been anyone's. It was probably looking at the Netherlands game for a while. So South Africa find themselves comfortably on top, should make it out of the group if you ask most people.
Just a little mention for Tristan Stubbs also. Gave David Miller good support at the other end.
Yeah, absolutely. Needs to be said. He was definitely given the support he needed. So I think they're looking.
And it played a different sort of innings from what we've seen.
Not the crazy strike rate innings that we got accustomed to during the IPL. So this was a lot more tempered and a lot more sort of, he needed to play the situation a lot more carefully. And so as a result of that, South Africa find themselves comfortably placed as group toppers at this moment in time. They obviously still need to complete the remaining matches they have. Sri Lanka are kind of bottom of the table. Lost to Bangladesh as well. So kudos to Bangladesh for that win. It was a low scoring game as well. I think Sri Lanka hit 124 odd for 120 odd for 8. Bangladesh chased it down. although it was
some hiccups along
along the way, but they were able to get it done. So I think South Africa now lead the group. Bangladesh are second. The Netherlands, kudos to them, they won a game. Nepal find themselves fourth, and Sri Lanka, complete the table, floundering in fifth. So
I think we see South Africa making out of this pretty easily, considering where things are. But I think the other spot is between maybe two or three teams. I don't know about this group. It's like I'm maybe not the group to sort of keep your eye on. But that rounds off,
this week's action.
It's been interesting for different flavor of cricket, right?
Different flavor of cricket for sure. I mean, we've gotten, I suppose we're still adjusting to the scores that we kind of expect to be scored at this World Cup. I mean, a lot of things could change as they maybe move more towards playing the West Indies, because those pitches seem to be a lot more true in terms of the way they've played out, as opposed to some of the American pitches where I suppose they're still trying to figure out how to curate these pitches effectively. But I think it's definitely an interesting first week. It's thrown some real surprises, some not so surprising results, 7-1. You figure out what that is. But, it remains to be seen how, I'm excited. Both of us are incredibly excited, what the next week has in store. Let's see how drastically, these tables sort of shift. And, I suppose in due time, we will know, the two teams that qualify from each group. And then before you know it, Super 8s will come along.
Yeah. I think Super 8s is going to get really juicy next week. Look out for whether or not Pakistan make it out of this group. Their hopes are looking super bleak. England not looking as bleak, but definitely have some work to do. And hopefully New Zealand can make it as well. I would like to see this to be like a clash of the best teams in the Super 8. But we're excited to bring it to you. So with that said, have a great rest of the week. Stay in touch with the action, and meet us here for all the action and the commentary and jokes, because we're funny guys.
Take care, guys.
Take care. All right. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.